Well, hey there. Welcome back to Shapes 2. I'm Joe Mama, your host, and I've got some good news. Good news is, if you remember my last video, we discussed how I needed overflow protection for my systems. Well, turns out I found some. I know how to do it now. Bad news is, I went to try to explain it and make a video about it, but I realized that it assumes a lot of knowledge about wires because it's not a simple thing. So it occurred to me that maybe the best thing I need to do is to start at the basics here. So this video is about wires and is about the components that goes with them. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get right to it. So wires is enabled in upgrades. You don't immediately start the game with it. As it turns out, you have about 4 different upgrades you got to go through before you've got basically all the systems for wires. There's wire basics, logic gates, simulated buildings, and global wire transmission, which is kind of nice. I haven't used it yet, but I like the sound of it. It allows you to send signals wirelessly over different channels, and reading the operator shapes requires the 3rd floor. So you have to, yeah, there you go. So even to get that, you have to enable the 3rd floor. So let's start out with some of the basic components. Well, first let's look at the menu. If we click the sub menu down here that says, or not sub menu, the menu down below that says the wires, click on that and you're going to be presented with the conveyor belts, which seem to always be there. Oops. Let's go ahead and check that and claim it. All right, we've got the conveyor belt. We can ignore that, but wires, okay, it's our basic component. So let's click on that, and there we go. That's our basic component. It's a wire, just a little strip of wire, and you can move it around just like you would a conveyor belt. Wires carry signals, by the way, and it could be various types, but point is, wire's the method you need to carry it. But you're going to come to a point where you might have to cross over one wire without transmitting the signal onto that wire. And to do that, you've got this wire bridge. And then next you've got the wire transmitter. Now what this is good for, this is useful for transmitting from one platform to another. So if you've got a signal you need to transmit, you can do it this way. That way you've got, you know, some kind of wireless connection, because that is one disadvantage here. None of these platforms, you have to throw the objects from one to another. There's no actual, like, real physical connection. Even the space belts, it's not exactly a connection. So there we've got the wireless transmission. Okay, so then we've got the global wire transmitter and the global wire receiver. Okay, we'll get into those at another time. We don't need them right now. And then the next item here, let's see, if we click on wires and we go to display. Now there's no sub options under that. All the display is like a little television screen. That's what this is right here. So it displays whatever signal is on a wire. So you just connect it to the wire, click and drag it, and it's going to tell you what signal that wire is carrying. So you can see I've used displays everywhere here. Signal producer. So this is a device. This is what it looks like when you lay it down. But once you configure it, hit configure, and you can put something in here that can tell you what it's transmitting, what kind of signal you're transmitting. It could be a color, like let's see, like right here, I've got one just transmitting a color, and it is the color red. So you tell it color/red. It's all the nomenclature's right here. You can tell it'd be null, number, fluid, item code, whatever. So that is a very useful item to simulate, you know, a particular signal input. Next is flow control. So for this, you've got a couple of different items. You've got the belt reader. Now what the belt reader does, it does a couple things actually. It'll read the content, what's on the belt, and it'll send that along a signal. So let's see, like right here. We've got a belt reader under here. It's doing 2 things for us. Now the number is telling you how many of a particular item are passing under the belt, and then this display below it is reading the signal that comes from that belt reader, and it's telling us what the shape is that it's reading. So it really kind of does 2 purposes. The rate of items passing underneath it just sort of stays there, but the signal coming off of it, the the shape type, we can use that and manipulate it and do things with it if we so desire. Okay, so flow control with that. Then we've got the belt filter. Now this is kind of interesting, and it actually, let's see, configure signal producer. Nope, we're not gonna deal with that. This is, let's see, a little section of belt, looks like a little T intersection. Okay, the belt filter has one input and two outputs. One output is marked by a red X, the other output's marked by a green check mark. And depending on what kind of signal input it gets, it will shunt items one way or another. And here we can kind of demonstrate that. Now, right now, this is receiving an on signal, which those of you familiar with digital principles and whatnot know that ones and zeros, digital is all about ones and zeros, ons and offs. And an on signal is generally marked by the number 1. So this number 1 is telling us that it's receiving an on signal. And if we were to turn it off, we would, let's see, I'm going to get to this little guy in a second, but we can turn it off by flipping this switch right here, toggle it. That's a button, by the way. And then now look what happens. We've turned it off. So now it's receiving an off signal, and the items are shunted the other way. See how that went? But there's something else you should know. There's a third option you can do with this gate. Now, right now, this is receiving an off signal, OFF. If we were to remove that, and that signal, you might ask, well, where's that signal coming from? Or, Eric, why are you even asking me where the signal's coming from? It's off. That means there's no signal, right? Not so much. Not in this application. In this game, a no signal is a null signal. That's what it's called. So let's go ahead, open that, and we're breaking off the off signal, which is coming from this gate, this little triangle looking thing. We're breaking that signal away, and now we've got no signal. Okay, and now take a look at the filter, at the belt filter. It's actually stopped flow in any direction, and that's an important thing to know. Because when you try to set this thing up, I found it very confusing. Why couldn't I get this thing to work? And the thing was, I was not understanding that there was a difference between an off signal and a null signal. Now, our gates, we're going to talk about these gates. They emit when, in the absence of any inputs, or in the absence of the proper input, or whatever that might be, it will, in their quote off position, they're actually emitting a signal. It's just an off signal. So let's go ahead and connect that back up. And with the off signal, it just shunts this thing around and it goes a different direction. So that's a very helpful feature. But again, we got to understand the difference between off and null signal. Okay, next is the pipe gate, which basically is kind of the same thing. And I'm going to go over here, and I've set up a pipe gate here. And it is currently off. It's not receiving a signal, so that, and I mean, even this button says off, but to be honest, it's a null signal. Okay, a little bit confusing, but just understand this button right here, if it's in the off position, this gate is shut, and that's the proper plumbing term. It's not, the gate isn't closed, the gate is shut. The valve is shut. Yeah, proper plumbing terminology. All right, so let's go ahead. We're going to toggle this to on. And we see it opens the gate, allows the fluid to come in, and it can start filling our storage. So hopefully that makes sense. And then we can, again, I think if we toggle that into off position, then the pipe actually backs up. Did you see the pipe? The fluids actually increased? Like it, when I close that valve, this swelled up. Now watch what happens when I open it. Yeah, look at that. That's crazy. Okay, well, interesting. Go ahead and toggle it into the off position, but there you go. So basically it is a way for the electronics to interact with plumbing fixtures, plumbing principles. All right, so there we've got that taken care of. Let's go to a button. We just talked about that. In this game, we've got buttons, and it says on or off, but even as I'm trying to tell you the difference between an on signal, there's conflict. As I try to tell you the difference between an on and an off signal, or an off and a null signal, this when the button is in the off position, it emits no signal at all, and it's null. Even though it says off, it's null. So if I do that. And then I put a display on it, it's nothing. And then if I turn it on, it becomes 1, turn it off, it's nothing. So it doesn't actually emit an off signal, it emits a null signal, which is nothing. So that's how a button works. Okay, the logic gates. Here we go. This is sort of the meat of everything we sort of need to understand. So we've got a few different logic gates. We're going to start with the AND. The AND gate, it has, each of these gates have 2 inputs and 1 output. You can see them here. And depending on what kind of signal it gets, it'll activate the gate, like we explained earlier. So right now, these gates, most of them are emitting a off signal. Okay, that's important. Not a null, but an off signal. So if we were to hook that off signal to this gate or to this belt filter right now, it would shunt it like it is off to the side. But this is an AND gate. An AND activates, it sends an on signal if both inputs are on. And hopefully you're electrical savvy enough to understand that these are 2 parallel signals, and I'm about to use them to test these gates. So if I turn this one on, now you're going to see that one lit up, and some of our gates changed states. We're going to get to all that. But our important one here, the AND gate, did not change state. It is still sitting here off. Okay, it's emitting a off signal. Both inputs are not yet on, so we have to go ahead and toggle the next one on. And as you can see, it now the gate is activated, and we get a 1 out of it. The next gate is the OR gate, and this is the one that is actually pretty important to what we're going to be doing with the overflow protection. This gate, the OR gate, activates if either of the signals are on, either of the 2 signals. So if I turn either of these off, okay, that's going to stay on. Toggle it back on, then switch buttons, toggle that one off, and even then it stays on. Okay, so that one will only work if it'll work if the left or the right is active. The AND gate will only work if the left and the right is active. See where the name comes from. Now this is a NOT gate. A NOT gate sort of does the opposite of what you tell it. If you give it an on signal, it turns off. If you tell it to turn off, it turns on. Okay, that's useful. It has uses. Doesn't seem like it, but it does have uses. Then you have the XOR gate, if that's how you say it. Now the XOR gate says it activates if exactly one input is on. And you might say to yourself, well, isn't that what an OR gate is? Not exactly. An OR gate will activate if either of these are on, but if both of them are on, this will stay on. But look what happens to the XOR gate. See, if I just toggle that one on and off, okay, the OR gate just stays in the on position because it's already got an on signal already. So basically you're like, yeah, nope, I'm already staying on. At least one of my feeds is on. But the XOR gate's saying, no, I only want 1. If you give me 2, I'm turning off. And if we give it 0, it turns off. So it needs 1 to stay on. The next is, they call it a comparison. I'm going to call it a comparator, like from Factorio. Basically, it takes 2 signals and then it provides a comparison. If those signals meet the condition of the comparison, then it sends an on signal, it activates. And there's a couple of different signals you can give it. And let's see if they're equal. If greater to or equal, less. Okay, see, now if one is less than the other, which they're not, they both read 120, then conditions would be true, but right now it's not true. So you can set the conditions right there, which is very cool. I'm not even sure Shapez had that one. The next is a gate. It's just a straight gate. Now, what a gate does in integrated circuit terms, in solid state terms, it's a circuit that shuts down unless another signal is telling it to turn on. So in this case, this gate is shut. Okay, think of it as a shut gate. The only way it's going to allow a signal to pass through it is if it gets an outside input of some kind. So let's go ahead and turn that button on, and you can see the gate. Boom. Okay. It opens the gate and allows this signal from this signal generator to pass through to this display. Toggle it off and it cuts it off. So that's how that works. Now, I don't know, did I show you this? We went and talked about the upgrades. One of them is simulated buildings, and that might sound like a kind of a funny thing, but what it is, it's a way of simulating the functions of actual buildings, but instead of affecting actual shapes, it affects the signal of a shape. So for example, I've got this signal producer right here. It's producing this signal right here, which, let's see. I mean, there you go, right there. There's an example of it, but let's just keep it simple, and we'll put a display right there, just so you can see what it's broadcasting. And you know what? I'm going to put another one. Copy, rotate, and we'll put it right there, so you can... Wait a second. There. Okay. So you can see what's on that one. So this is a simulated shape. So these simulated buildings are basically going to do to this signal what the actual building would do to an actual shape. So this signal passes through. This is our simulated half destroyer. What do you think happens? The shape gets half destroyed. The west side, you remember that? The west side gets destroyed. And now I've taken that little bit and run it through a simulated rotator, and you can see what it does there. It actually rotates the remaining shape. And then let's see, I had the signal brought over here to a simulated stacker, and the other input from the stacker, which, you know, stackers have two inputs, so does the simulated building. It's receiving a simulated signal of a circle, of an uncolored circle from one side, and it's receiving our little star shape from the other. And the output is, and I just put a display on it so you can see it, it's this blue and white star stacked on top of the circle, so you can see how that works. And then here is our unstacker, simulated unstacker. So when we bring it back up to here, it splits the signal back up to its respective stacks. So again, hopefully that makes sense. Then you've got, let's see, what do we got here? A simulated painter. Did I do a simulated crystal? No, I didn't. We have a simulated crystal as well, but we're not going to worry too much about... Actually, you know what? No, I think that might be a good idea. That might be a good idea. But we'll have to do it right here on camera, but that's all right. This is a simulated painter, and we've taken an uncolored circle, run it through the painter, and we can simulate a color coming in from the side, which is the color red, and it takes that color, applies it to the shape, and spits out a red circle. Okay? Hopefully that's self-explanatory. And then here, using a different shape, I've got the simulated, using these two shapes together, the swapper. So it takes two halves and swaps them, so you get two different shapes there. Makes sense. And then this is our pin-up machine. It simulates pinning up the shape. It might be hard to tell, but this is pinned. You can kind of see it. You can sort of see the pins under it. Actually, if we take it, can we actually look at this? Look at the shape? No, we can't. But look how small it is in the circle compared to the original. You can see, you know, they get smaller when they go up layers, right? So that insinuates that that has been pushed up at least one layer. So if this has been pushed up, then we should be able to take, let's see, simulated buildings. I don't know why I didn't think to do this. So, which one? I'm assuming this is the color. And we'll put a display here. It's not getting anything because it hasn't got any color yet. And then we'll do that. There we go. And there you can see it injects the color where the pins are. And there you see the simulated crystal underneath. So that's how that works. Now the simulated building thing might seem like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But when we get into making a make anything machine, these are absolutely critical to being able to do that. So yeah, it's very nice that this Shapez 2 has that option. All right, well, also, one last thing too. I don't think I mentioned this, that wires, when you set them up, okay, let's get sort of a 3D oblique look at it. And we're just gonna start laying some wires out, but just like conveyor belts, you can hit the E and start laying it around in the next layer if we so desire, and we can hit E again and just keep going however we want to do it, and you can build on all 3 layers with the wire. So just know that that option is available as well. Well, I think that about covers it. Now, obviously, you know, these are just a few basic items, but you know, a creative Shapez player can do a lot with them, as we no doubt know. And even I've learned to do some neat things with them, and I hope to keep doing it in Shapez 2 as well. But anyway, keep an eye open for the next video, and there I will explain how our overflow protection works. If this all makes sense, hopefully we'll have no problem talking about overflow protection. All right, y'all have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one. Ciao.